Hey everybody, it's Newton, and welcome to a beautiful pre-spring day here in northern New Jersey. We're going to be reviewing my AP1 Honda S2000. I got this car in November. It's now March, so you do the math. Hell, I've had it a few months now, and I took it through the fall, through the winter on snow tires, and I'd like to share some things about it with you. Let's talk a little bit about the interior of the car. This is a Suzuka Blue, and that comes with a blue interior also. It has leather seats, and this is the leather's cracking. The support of the bolstering is pretty good. Now it's funny. The seating position of this car, it's obviously nice and low. I always feel like I have to adjust myself a little bit. Like I'm driving along, and maybe the seat is not quite in the right position laterally, left to right. Something is a little off. So the one at Gripsy is pretty good for a stock seat. There's something a little weird. Now, about the ergonomics of the car, as is known, the steering wheel is fixed position, no tilt, no telescope. So you have to make sure that it's the right size for the car. I'm a 5'8", relatively, a little bit overweight, but relatively average American size, and the car fits me very well. The transmission tunnel hugs my body, the door hugs my body. The seats hold me in pretty well. There's spots for your knees here to push back against if you're going around a really hard corner. So in that sense, it's good. There's a cup holder here, which is pretty worthless because it's right in the way. So it's only if you're kind of desperate for a cup holder. Shifter's right here, and it is, as reputed, fantastic shifter. Very short throws from the factory. Put a short shift kit on it. It's almost too short, as I found with the first one I test drove. It was a little bit hard to find the gears. Very mechanical and very assured shifts. The actual shift knob, depending on what gear you've got, can be aluminum or partially leather wrapped. They had a titanium accessory upgrade also. And for the CR Special Edition, I think it's a round knob, and I think it might be a titanium knob also. Leather wrapped wheel. The wheel is not very thick. I think it's a fairly small wheel. I like it. Controls, of course, you've got HVAC controls on the right of the steering wheel, audio controls on the left of the steering wheel. The radio from the factory has a door here. I removed the door because the only clock, there's no clock on the this year. Some of the later cars had a clock on the dashboard. This one doesn't have that in the instrument panel. I mean, this car doesn't have any clock except for the radio clock. I use the clock all the time, so I removed that. Aftermarket stereo. The speakers here, I think there's only the two door speakers, and one of them vibrates a lot. I'm not sure if that's blown or if it's just a loose panel somewhere. This interior is sparse but elegant. There's nothing at all on the passenger side except for the vent and the airbag. So the gauge cluster. The TOC has the little lighted bars that go up to red line, and the speedometer is only numeric. It doesn't have a analog looking gauge. And take it or leave it, I don't particularly like that, but it was not a deal breaker for me. I like to have the traditional sweep speedo. Other than that, the controls are pretty basic. Parts bin, mirror and window controls, the electric cruise control is here in the middle along with the hazard lights. It has cruise control. My cruise control is actually not working. I'm not quite sure why that is, but so about the soft top. The soft top has a known weakness where there's elastic bars. I'm going to raise the top just to show you what that is. So the frame here, as it collapses, this bar has to go back, and it has elastic bands here to pull it back. Well, the elastic bands wear out, and this bar can get stuck here. If it gets stuck, it pulls on the roll bar here, and it can put a hole in the top eventually. So when you're looking at S2000 or you have one, you have to push the bar back unless you replace these, which is just a pain in the neck to do. So push this back. So these latches were actually broken when I bought the car. I had to replace them. You can see a little patch here where something happened. Oh, the patch is falling off. So leaks. This soft top, there's two drains here, one behind each panel, like next to the seats. and the drains can get clogged. There's also a seal around the lip in the back where the trunk meets it. That can leak, and the trunk also has a vent behind the front bumper, the rear bumper, and that can also leak. So my car had a clogged drain, which I cleared. It had the gasket wore out in the vent, that was leaking, so I sealed that. I also have a leak at the lip at the back. Now to fix that would require taking apart the back of the top and re-riveting it. And frankly, I think I'd rather deal with a leak. I have a replaceable cover I can put over the car, so with all that said, let's go for a drive. So the first thing that stymies first-timers, including a lot of salespeople, is how to start the car. There's an engine start button, but it's not what you usually encounter nowadays. The start button only controls the starter. So you'll need to push the start button and also turn the key on. And here we go. 6-speed manual transmission. So let's talk, as we go out of this park, let's talk about the differences AP1, AP2 a little bit. The AP2, of course, has a larger displacement engine. It makes the same amount of power. It makes it lower on the torque band, has a little bit more torque. So, you know, that it depends on your driving style. I mean, if you're okay revving the engine out farther, then it's you know, it's not a big deal. I test drove 2 AP1s and 2 AP2s. I found that the sound of the AP2 was a little more refined, a little more harmonious. Like I don't know why that would be, but it just sounds, the AP1 sounds a little noisier, a little more raucous. So also with the AP2 you get a heavier flywheel, to the point where when I first drove the AP2 it felt natural to rev match coming from my Jetta, but when I first drove an AP1 it felt like the revs were dropping very fast, and I had to adjust my rev matching technique to match that. The AP2 also has different gearing to match its revised power band. There's different differentials depending on what the year is. The early AP1s had an issue where you could possibly blow the diff if you launch too hard. I try not to launch the car anyway. I'll talk about that in a minute. A little bit different interior, random features like the clock. It's just the chassis balance was adjusted. The AP2s are a little less tail happy. I don't find it a problem as long as you're aware of the car you're driving, and that you're driving a rear-wheel drive light car, a roadster, and you know that it's a possible thing to have oversteer. It's not a problem. It's, you know, you have to know what you're driving, that's all. So I like the AP1. I haven't spent much time with the AP2. When I was trying to decide, I almost initially favored the AP2 because people say it's a better street car, it's more fine, they worked out kinks. And I got to thinking, you know, I've never really driven an AP2 very much. What do I know? So I looked for my favorite color, which is Suzuka Blue, and one that was the right price and good condition, etc., good maintenance history. I ended up with this AP1, and I'm very happy with it. I'm glad I didn't have to pay the AP2 premium either. So let's talk about handling a little bit and road holding. The people say corner's so perfectly flat. It's very flat. It's not perfectly flat. You do feel a little bit of lean in very hard cornering. I guess maybe that's a given. The brake pedal is very firm. This is all the AP1s and some of the first 2 years of the AP2s had a physical throttle linkage instead of drive-by-wire that the later ones has. So throttle response, people say the drive-by-wire throttle response is very good too. Throttle response here is extremely good. There's no traction control, you're on your own. There is ABS. One of the biggest things that struck me when I got into this car out of the Jetta is, oh my gosh, the throttle steering. It's so responsive to lifting the throttle, turns in, and when you get back on the throttle, it pushes it out. It's phenomenal. Now, the tires I have on this car, it came with new Firestone Firehawk All Seasons, which are a performance all-season tire, so it's nothing mind-blowing in terms of tires, but grip is very good, responsive handling is very good, and I'm wondering what kind of alignment settings might make it even better as far as You know, that feeling of the car telling you what it's doing in corners. So let's talk about launching and power. Now the car has 240 some horsepower at the crank. That's not a mind-blowing number, but you know, you've got a 2,800 pound car. It's not a slow car. It's 0 to 60 is the common figure is about 5.8 0 to 60. But I'll tell you something. This car is not a 0 to 60 car, and it might be a reasonably quick car 0 to 60. It's not satisfying to do a 0 to 60 pull in this car. Maybe we'll do one in a second, but you get up in the VTEC, and if you're just trying to push it, it feels like you're abusing the car. It's not that the car can't do it. That's not what that power is there for. The power is there. Now 90% of the time driving around the street, I never even get into VTEC. 3,000 to 5,000 RPM and 6,000. That's where this car has wonderful day-to-day power. It's enough power for getting around town without feeling like a slug. What's the VTEC there for? What is 6,000 and 9,000 there for? That is for squirting from corner to corner on a canyon road, on the track, the autocross, the country drives. You're up in that 6,000, 9,000 power, you go around a corner, you hit it, it just boom! It shoots you to the next corner, and then you brake, and then you go around the corner, momentum, it shoots you to the next corner. It's that rhythm. It doesn't feel like it's a pull car, it's a car that's meant to shoot you from one corner to the next. That's where this car is just in its element. I just got a rev from Cobalt SS here. So insurance. Insurance is pretty expensive in this car. I priced out the ND Miata, the BRZ, and the S2000, and there was maybe $100 variation per year, I think, between each one of those. So I think it was the ND Miata was the cheapest, followed by the BRZ, followed by the S2000. So if you're looking to economize on insurance, this is not the car to get. It has a reputation for going off the road because people drive it off the road, and I'm sure, you know, it attracts young, fast drivers, and you know, you have to know how to drive it without driving off the road. So not every owner did, and so there you have it. Now over here, oh gosh, look at this, a nice FC RX-7. With a dented-in nose, I see, unfortunately. Wow, it looks stock. T-top, I guess? I'm not sure what the top configurations are in this car, but... Hey, Mazda. One of the weaknesses of the S2000 is aerodynamics. So the standard car, not the CR, without any kind of aero upgrades, it does generate lift. It doesn't have downforce. So if you get up in speed and you start to go around corners, the car doesn't have as much grip as it does at lower speeds. It makes it a good autocross car, not such a great track car unless you put some aero on it. I even feel that, you know, I don't have the same level of confidence I did in the Jetta going around fast corners, like even on the highway, just because, you know, the Jetta tended to understeer, and this car would tend to possibly oversteer, or at least be neutral. And so if you're going to be doing tracking, you're going to want to look at aero. Some of the just random things that I did in the car, I put in a new radio, I put in a blue convex mirror. The car is so low that I was finding even when the stock mirror was in night mode, it was very bright, the headlights behind me, because the headlights were shining right into the mirror. When I was shopping for what car I wanted to get, the issue of the convertible was kind of, I never really thought about maybe I would like to have a convertible. I always just kind of treated it as, well, happens to be that two of the light rear drive cars, the Miata and the S2000, are convertibles, and so, you know, that's just kind of that's the market. But I had no idea how much I was going to like having a convertible. I like being outside, I like hiking, and when I realized that I can now drive outside, it's just an amazing experience. It adds more wear to the top if you put it down, they say, below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. That didn't stop me from putting it down colder than that. There's a special top-down setting on the heater, which blows like this, kind of across the plane of the car out like that, and I found it. Oh, look at that! Looks like we've got an NC over here. Hello. Anyway, so that heating effect really works well, and down into the 30s really, and so I drove through the winter a lot of the time with the top down. So for as much as I say I don't care for 0 to 60 pulls, let's do one, just because, you know, how can you have a car review without doing that? So homage à Subaru WX fan. So let's turn on to this on-ramp here and see how it does. Oh, this thing's quick! Let's see if we can get some handling in too. Let's see if we get this Accord to get ahead of us enough so we can bomb this curve. Come on, baby. Accord did pretty well. Hey everybody, hope you enjoyed the in-car review. There are some other points that I didn't cover before, and I wanted to go over those before we leave you today. First of all, shout out to Zygreen and Zentrose on YouTube. They both have or had S2000s and reviewed them. Talk about that on YouTube. Shout out also to Subaru WX fan Hurrah and Everyday Driver and Matt at the Smoking Tire. All three of those folks have reviewed many cars, including the S2000, and that played a big role in my decision to get an S2000. So the trunk is very usable on the S2000. I go grocery shopping on a regular basis, and I have a family, and everything fits in perfectly well into the trunk. Another concern that kind of relates to the insurance is theft. S2000s have a reputation for being stolen a lot, so I got the comprehensive coverage with the lowest possible deductible on mine. Of course, they won't cover aftermarket, so I mean, I've heard of people having expensive wings stolen off their S2000 as well as the whole car. So if you live especially if you live in an urban area, but really if you live anywhere, make sure you take precautions. If you have a garage, use it, and be prepared for the very real possibility that you may come out and to get your S2000 one day and it's not there, and it's cut up in a boat somewhere. Fuel economy. So this varies very much with use. When I was driving my car back from North Carolina when I first bought it, I got consistently 32 miles a gallon on the highway at 70 miles an hour. Normally around town use I get around 23, 24, and if I'm kind of hard street driving, 19 or 20. Winter time it went down to maybe 18. Maintenance, well, so far I haven't had the car very long, but I took it to Billman, who's a New York area S2000 expert mechanic. So he did his valve adjustment and replaced the timing chain tensioner with his custom fab part. Otherwise, the car is in good shape. It's been well maintained. Early AP1s especially, but AP1s in general, I guess some of them burn oil at the rate of maybe a quart per oil change. I'm not sure. I did add some oil at one point, but since I had him change the oil, it's not been, I haven't seen any oil loss. He used Mobil 1. Modification potential. So, unlike, let's say, a Miata, the S2000 was engineered a lot more aggressively. So, in order, especially if you're talking about power, to get more power out of that engine, you're going to need to do more radical changes. So you see folks either doing forced induction, of course. You can do independent throttle bodies. There's not as much power to be gained through, breathing the car more, intake plus exhaust as some other cars, especially with the intake. Most of the aftermarket intakes you'll find there's a trade-off, like a lot of times there'll be heat soak issues. The Password JDM air intake is probably the best reputation. It's now going for $1,100, and it seems to be avoiding the problems that some of the less expensive intakes come with, but to have an aftermarket part that expensive right on the front of the car, it wasn't worth it for me. But if you're really going for the performance, or if you really want the sound, and you want to, you don't want to run into heat soak issues, you're tracking the car or whatever, looking at Password JDM. Yeah, suspension, I mean, you can upgrade it, but from the factory, it's really an excellent car, unless you're doing, if you're going to track a lot, if you're competing in autocross, or if you just want a stance car or whatever. But if you just want a stance car or whatever, you can go that route. So finally, do I recommend the S2000 when I get it again? Absolutely. The S2000, in my opinion, completely lives up to its reputation. It's not a perfect car, and it requires a certain driving style. It's a peaky engine, and so it expects you to rev it out. And it's a dramatic engine, so when you rev it out, it makes a lot of noise. And that's one of the things I like about it. You rev out a BRZ all the way, and it just kind of growls a little bit at you. It doesn't really sound like much, and I didn't want to have to add an aftermarket exhaust to get that. So yes, I would absolutely recommend the S2000. It's a very well engineered car, quality, exciting driving experience. It's beautiful, and furthermore, at this point, they're probably only going to be gaining in value. So it's, from an investment standpoint, relative to other cars, it's also a sound choice. If you are in the market for a light rear drive car, absolutely check out the S2000. That's it for now. Hope you enjoyed the review, and this is Yitz Newton signing off. Drive safe and keep the shiny side up.